I guess we can go around the horn and talk about projects or some of the things that we're working on. There's any safety a minute for tonight?
Well, I have a tragic safety story that's probably worthwhile sharing, having to do with loose-fitting clothing. The short story is a hardworking mother, her and her husband tried a franchise, didn't do so well in the franchise business, lost money, gets a job making minimum wage. No, not minimum wage, but like $10 or $15 an hour in a cookie factory. Cold in the factory. They give her some a coat to keep her warm. The coat's loose fitting, catches her arm in the conveyor belt, chews up her arm. Multiple surgery, still not sure she's going to save her arm, all for a crappy $10 or $15 an hour job in order to recover from a crappy franchise experience. So bottom line is, don't wear loose-fitting clothing around operating machinery.
Or tight-fitting in the case of rings. If you've got a tight ring on your finger.
Yep, that is a good reminder.
That's a very good point. I always tell, because I got a few friends, and we were all, I'm a weekend, like a maker / woodworker / machinist / welder, whatever you want to say. And I don't do that as a professional. So I always advise that the safety is paramount. Just invest in all the safest equipment and all the safety accessories, whatever you can, just do it. And then when you do it, just be very careful. And that's with the experience, because if you don't do it every day, I mean, sometimes if you feel like familiarity, it just makes you a little more comfortable with things. But I think that should not be the case. You should be very, very careful all the time. I think that's just a very good point.
I have a familiarity with getting stuff in my eye and cutting my hands and getting slashed on my head. That's why I wear safety gear.
Absolutely.
That's a good point, Al. We want to go around the horn and talk about the projects and any help we need on different areas.
How long do you have?
Laser share.
Al Jones working on a lawn tractor along with Matt, hoping to translate that into John Deere tractor. Let's see, I would say we are at the point of able to do a fair number of things in simulation, but not yet able to drive from a GPS provided waypoint to another GPS provided waypoint. That's on the software side. On the hardware side, working on sort of the next generation from Matt's design. If you see some of the pictures floating around, he has a potentiometer that he measures the angle with a potentiometer similar to this, not exactly this one, but similar to this. He's got a metal gear. Can't see my camera. Similar to this, but not exactly this, partially because this is a 3D printed gear. So Christian helped translate that metal gear into a 3D printed gear and is offered to you know, design and provide the 3D file to 3D print, you know, a coupler to merge that gear with the potentiometer. So that's one of the things making progress on the physical side. Also on the physical side, this is the steering motor. Hopefully nothing's going to fall off and crash and break anything. And I was able to find a vendor that can make a the mounting bracket for that. So it's a very odd shaped. That's a good image. It's a very odd shaped piece of equipment, and this $70 or $80 bracket, you know, gives you a nice flat surface to be able to mount the motor. So that was a good find. So yeah, that's what at the moment I'm now spending more
Can you say
time.
more about the motor? What's the brand?
It's that, you know, $60 or $70 deal off of eBay. It's in my bill of material in the lawn tractor.
Oh, okay.
It's the electric power steering motor out of a number of different cars: Chevrolet Volt, Saturn Vue.
Perfect.
$70 or $80 on eBay.
So much better than the $500 U-steer.
Got to get it to work, but well, Matt's is working, so he's the you know, Lewis and Clark and Sakajiwana all in one.
Following Kyler and
You have direct control of the motor, right? There's not a motor controller in the way? Great.
I mean, that you can buy those. I was going to use you know, 45 amp motor controller.
Yep. Some of the power steering units for cars, I think, have built-in controllers. So that's scared me off a bit.
Yeah, the one I bought, I mean, the motor controller is actually still mounted. I haven't taken it off. But
Okay. But it's external. Yeah. Cool.
Proprietary.
That's great.
So, spending a little time on the physical as well as the software side. That's it for me, Matt.
it's awesome, Al. Kyler, what are you working on these days? Playing around?
I'm not playing around much. I am playing with some brushless DC motors every now and then. But right now I'm trying to design my new planter. So no fun ROS things right now. Unless someone wants to do a ROS planter controller, and I would be totally up for that.
What's that entail? What's in there? mean,
So, yeah, you'd so having a prescription map, so you know the spacing, population spacing, and then running PWM motors, I think, and then watching inductive or optical seed drop sensors and detecting spacing issues. Yeah, and then keeping a coverage map so you know when to turn on, when to turn off individual rows. I think Ross could do it. It'd be really cool to have it, but I probably won't go that route. Not this year, at least.
Yeah.
What is the John Deere solution to that problem?
It's built into the 2630 controller display. And then I use the Precision Planting SeedSense 2020, which runs Linux and is pretty hackable. um, but very proprietary program running on it.
And the retail price of their solution?
About 5,000 for the controller. So it would be fun to have something totally open.
Very cool.
I would be quite pleased to pay someone to come up with something similar.
There you go, Sam, in your off hours.
Yeah. Get a couple of us to chip in 5-10 grand. Can we do anything?
Sure. It's well, if you have the spec, actually, I can get a lot of help. I mean, and there are people out there we can. There's the community students, also the people who would actually work for the money, and they're not really expensive. They get the result as long as we have everything laid out in a way that they understand. Because what they understand is just the technical side of the things, like programming. That's it. They don't understand the semantics, and the what we're trying to do. I mean, we just have to give them sort of a blueprint, and they can work on it. I mean, and that can be done pretty much.
Well, it would be fun to do. I have a feeling it could consume all of my time if I did it, so that's why I'm trying to keep a little distance. But if someone was interested in spearheading that, I would definitely get behind it.
Sure. I mean, and as I said, I always like the challenges. So if I can work on the spec first, myself, and with your help, and then if we get to the point where we think that we need like more help in terms of technical and programming stuff, and then I think at that point we should go out.
Yep, agree. Okay, well, let's talk more.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to give you my update, what I did over the past, actually 1 week, right? I was working on, I was trying to develop, I was thinking that if I have to actually design a robot, like our ROS base, and the ROS kind of in the center, and then how would I design it? So I was just developing the steps that the way I comprehend the whole ROS side of it, and how I wanted to actually visualize from concept to the prototype. So I was just working on that, and I was just coming up with 5 or 6 steps, that I think that it's very useful in terms of the designing a robot with ROS, basically. I think it can be generalized, but I think it will my focus is more on like everything's ROS based at this point. So I was thinking about it, and then I was starting with just briefly. I have a little bit of things, just give you the ideas, and then obviously once this things matures, obviously I'll just have to actually work on it, document it. But right now, these are like something on my small notepad. Kind of really, I like the cards. I use this extensively for the designs and everything else. What I do, what I wrote like 6-step in terms of like how you frame your design idea, and then the very first thing that I wanted to do is I'm just going to briefly touch over, and you all know the process, but just wanted to share. So my first step is just create the mind map. That's how I start with. So be it anything, you take any system, and then you just create the mind map. It will be really nebulous, all sorts of ideas that you just put it, right there. And once you're done with that, then I'll just as a part of the second step is to just try and organize that. And when you organize that, I would call that, once you have this contextual the system kind of a mind map. We just wanted to have now what I call the phase is a subsystem map manifest. And then in that, the phase, like what I call phase 2, you start organizing the things in subsystem, and mostly in a way that you just group it, how it works, end to end kind of a deal. And then sort of third phase I'm entering, and this is still in beta. I'm just thinking about it, the whole thing. Haven't fully finalized yet. The subsystems, the next phase I just wanted to go into is just the subsystem activities. So I just wanted to list all the activities, whatever the high level activities. Just nothing into the detail. Or even if I can do the flow charting for the subsystems, I'll just do that at this point. Just the high level steps. Once I have that, the next phase I would call it as in Rossifying it. So you Rossify, and then what that means is now I'm bringing in the HRIM component modeling into it, because now you have the subsystems. You know all the subsystems that you want to use. All the components you wanted to use, and you start modeling. And then that modeling is around ROS. Just nothing fancy there. You just think about when I was thinking about it, I started with the topics, and then rather than notes, because I think if you think about it, if you think about designing a system in ROS, you should start thinking about the topics first, rather than thinking it in terms of the nodes. So you just go look at the topics, and then you decide that if you need any services or actions, and then you just start from there, and then just start designing the nodes. And then go to the parameters if you need any parameters at the very high level. Once that's done, and the next fix would be just to create software. And that would be what I call is the object-oriented, the class design, where you start mapping things, And I wanted to take the approach where you actually do the class-based design, not just the functions, or function-based design, or, the typical old school design kind of a deal. Because everything, if you put it into the, the class, you can for sure instantiate, and then take leverage of the Python, the programming, which is really nice, the object-oriented, the programming language. And you start from there, and you just basically build slowly. And as a part of the last phase, test, calibrate, iterate, which is very essential. I mean, you should not use anything without testing or calibrating. Not a single bit. And if you can simulate it at that point, if you're able to build simulation, that's great, actually. If you wanted to do that, that just gives you so much idea, about how your system's going to behave, once you design. So that's what I've been thinking. Haven't put anything into the document, just on the cards, but we'll do one day. A bit more progress on my learning side of the things.
That's good, Al. I like how you can organize. There's a lot of nodes, a lot of stuff, a lot of moving parts. So that's a great framework to organize all of the material.
Yes. And I see, because what I'm doing is side by side. I'm actually trying to design the one thing that actually also I have in my mind. So I'm not just simply writing it. I'm also designing it side by side, so putting it and then see that, okay, if it fits, or if it's just really making sense, or it just doesn't make any sense, or kind of a deal. So.
Oh, I would encourage you to, do we have a Google Docs that we share like working documents in? I know I've seen links for it before. Don't be smiling at me. I will come to this computer. Some of us have 4 jobs, okay? And we believe in Ross. Because I think, like, even if you're worried about the details, like, first off, we're not going to judge you, Sam. But I think if you can kind of start grouping that may help, like, the collective kind of think broadly, even if it's just topics. And then as you're building things in, people can follow along and kind of do a similar repetition. Because I think some of the things you're saying were all kind of they all make sense. And so if we can follow that along and teach in the community, I don't think waiting until you get to the finish point, then you're like, oh, I'm ready. Well, you may be already well beyond where most people are right now. So I think maybe that just even high level topics, just a suggestion.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just waiting to get to the point where I start feeling comfortable about it, before, before anyone else to start thinking about it and thinking it wrongly, and then I say, okay, well, this is not going to work that way, kind of a deal. Because, remember, a lot of things, when you put it out, I just wanted to make sure that it has at least scalability built in, kind of a deal, so that if anyone has to diverge from any point, they should be able to. But yeah, I mean, of course, that's the whole thing. That's why I'm just sharing. This is like, I just laid out this, all the fundamentals, like a design concepts, like last week. I was thinking about it, and I was just writing it and say, okay, I think this is necessary because I needed that. So I think that it might be of interest, of the community too.
Copy.
Cool.
Wally G, what have you been working on?
Man, everything. Oh, madness. But I've been lately doing so imagine some smart device in your or something in your brain or your AI gives you this amazing shopping list, and you have to go to the store to pick these items. So imagine that also goes through an optimized pick location, right, where you need to go to get these things so you can get the fastest route through the facility. Well, excuse me, the better relationship between the items. I am currently writing an algorithm leveraging A-star and Dijkstra. Well, Dijkstra first, which takes forever, so I'm now on A-star because that's just, you don't want to stay in Dijkstra's too long because we don't have that kind of time. So I moved to, I'm working on A-star to basically plot, because I know all the locations of every item. So I'm basically going to take that output of a list and I'm going to put it into my path planning tool, and I'm going to give a path plan to the human for now, but in the future it will be a robot. So that's what I've been working on. Pretty fun.
That's pretty cool.
You start to appreciate.
Salesman.
Well, I don't know what, I'm just all over the place. I'm in Dallas now, so I'll be here for a couple days.
I think he meant the algorithm.
Oh, yes. Kind of like that. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes. Kind of like that. But I have so many people, like some dudes call it Node and Spur. These other guys call it this. So I just try to group it together and use the word I find in the dictionary. But traveling salesman was, back in the day.
Old school.
Yeah. Which is funny when you think about how new it is, really, right? Like it's only been in since 60s or 70s that these algorithms have been around, like the A-star and the Dijkstra's first. And then it kind of built from there. And then now we're driving robots with them. Like it's only been like 30 or 40 years. It's kind of crazy.
Amazing.
Yep, it's amazing.
I have some Python code for doing it. Trying to remember the one I use. It's something where it makes a change and sees if it gets closer and then makes some more changes. Traveling salesman is hard.
Right, because you got to keep track of stuff and check where you are. Yeah, I'm not writing a lot of it from scratch. I'm leveraging genius people. But then still, you got to get, even if you have a perfect library, you still got to get your data right. And then you have to make sure, so I have these location points, but I don't have obstacles currently because the AutoCAD that we have isn't real geometries. It's just the pick locations that I had somebody put on the map for us. And I'm like, what? How does this building exist? This should be like... So anyway, it's all good. Character building. Robots.
Go robots.
That's it, and a little bit of IoT. I think IoT is freaking awesome.
Yeah. Jeff, are you in listen-only mode tonight?
Oh, I can probably say something here. Actually, I have several things to say. First of all, I put together a GPS antenna splitter, which I was inspired by RTK Live Explorer website. And he kept talking about having one antenna with multiple GPSs on to compare so you can get the exact same point on each one. And I contacted him, and I thought he was using some expensive $300 splitter with fancy RF transformers and stuff in it. He says, oh no, he just takes a SMAT and a DC blocking adapter and hooks those together, and that's all he uses. So I've got a metal box of 3 SMA connectors and a piece of wire and a capacitor, and I made a splitter, and it seems to work just fine. So So now I could put a single antenna, say, on my car and hook up 2 different GPS receivers to the same antenna, and then go drive around and see, do the points match as I drive around, and that'll give an indication of how well. Well, one of them's working and one of them's not, or they're both not working at that point. I guess it doesn't really solve your problem for you. But so anyway, that's something I can play with now. With it, I've been putting this off forever because I didn't think that would work. And he says, "Oh no, it'll work." So I tried it, and sure enough, it does work. And then also in the GPS world, that F9 U-Blocks from Kickstarter has made their limit, so that's apparently going to go ahead. And I had posted that, they just announced that it's going to be another 4 months. Well, it turns out that's a different one they're releasing. It's basically the dual frequency version of the one that I've got, and it's not the precision or the the professional one that does the actual calculations for you, which is the one that's up for sale right now. So hopefully that'll show up sometime in December. And I see my antenna I ordered from China is still sitting in China somewhere. That haven't sent out yet. So let's see, what else did I do? As far as my little mini tractor project, I still haven't figured out how to get a linear actuator to run the steering, so I'm still playing with that. And I thought there was something else on that. Oh, and then back to the mini tractor, I'm trying to figure out what kind of low-level controller to use. So I need some kind of a microcontroller. I keep going back and forth between, do I want a big microcontroller to do everything, do my motor control and my light control and read sensors and so forth, or do I want several little boards? And I keep going back and forth on that, and I'm kind of leaning back towards a big board again. So that's I get it all figured out one way, and it'd be easier to do it this way. So I just keep going back and forth, and eventually I'll figure out. Eventually, I just got to pick up a soldering iron and start soldering and see what happens. And if I use a big enough board, hopefully I won't run out of I/O pins, and that's my biggest concern right now, I guess. So that's about all I have to say.
It's good. It's amazing how much I/O you actually need. It's surprising all the stuff you can hook up. At least that's what I found. I haven't started soldering on the back of the Teensy. On the back of the Teensy board, it has like 8 extra pins, but you have to solder to the pads. They don't have through holes.
Yeah, I saw those back there, and one of my actually soldered the thing down to something, so I can't get to those anymore on whatever that project was. So you gotta think ahead on these things, and if you can use the wires on the back, don't solder it down.
I did that with the Teensy. I soldered directly to the Teensy board itself instead of going to a breakout board. And now I'm thinking, well, maybe that wasn't so smart. If I need to replace that Teensy or something happens, man, it's all, it'll be a lot of work versus just have a little plug. But live and learn, right? Just try something, see what happens.
That's true.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep,
Go ahead.
you're up.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I joined in late, but to weigh in on this part, on the soldering part, I really don't like to commit all of these sensors, especially when you have not you only have one backup for each of these sensors. So what I've found these days is USB has helped me a lot. So what I'm trying to do is we hook all of our sensors to the USB, to one USB hub, and then that hub goes to our TX2 in this case. And this helps because you can swap each of these sensors, and then you can get all of these data from, like, all the data that you need from over USB. The only concern is that I saw online that I think USB only supports up to 64 devices, the USB 3.0 that is, and USB, yeah, it's so. But I've also read online that when you have more than 10 or more than 10, like around 10 devices, it also tends to give lower speed than the actual USB 3.0 standard. So that's something to weigh in. And I think CAN is something that might be of an advantage to use over here at this point when you're trying to build a product and not just trying to prototype. But USB works great for prototyping, I think. That's my 2 cents.
I like it. Or where are you guys at in your project? Did you make any progress this week?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay, awesome. Sorry, my phone is about to die. But yes, we got we're trying to get our bill of materials together. We found some nice motors. We had to go with the motor because we're trying to work on an electric board this time. We're replacing the old batteries with lithium-ion ones. They are so much more efficient. We're getting 5 times more power. So they're 5 times more power dense than the regular what do they call them? Lead acid batteries. So we finally decided to make the move. Now that we have the money to spend on that. For sensors, we've been trying to get another Tinkerforge IMU, but they're out of stock. So we're also looking for alternatives. Meanwhile, I sent an email to ask Tinkerforge if they're planning to, bring in a new Tinkerforge IMU, like version 3, or if they're planning to bring the Brick V2 back in stock. So we'll see what happens when I receive that. I'll keep you guys updated on Slack. Other than that, not much progress. We have decided to just stay with MLED this time because we already have the hardware for GPS. I don't know. That's about it. I think we're gonna go with motors that have inbuilt or built-in encoders. So that would be nice to have velocity because last time that was the problem. So yeah, that's our update. We were hoping to get things ordered before November 1st, but we're still deciding on motors, trying to source them from somewhere we can, source them again if need be. Really trying to put in the reliability and maintainability concept for this robot, not just trying to build a prototype, but something that is closer to an actual product. So those are some concepts that we're mingling with.
Very nice. You're taking all the lessons you learned over the last couple of years with the different robots, and you're improving.
Yeah, that's the hope, right? I mean, if you don't improve, then it's not worth it. It's been 2 years already, so yeah. I see Al's here. Hey Al, I'll be in Pittsburgh actually on Thursday.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
If you have any free time, let me know.
Yeah, for sure. I will be in touch with you for that. But I just saw you and I said I'll come say hi. Maybe if we find some time, I can look fun on the tractor.
Yeah, well, my tractor's not here. It's still in Houston, but that'd be super cool to.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, it would be great to meet you. Yeah.
So speaking of motors, somebody was showing me the motors from the first robotics that they were doing, and I was surprised how cheap some of those were, compared to what I expected them to be. So I just posted the link to andymark.com, and this guy was showing me a motor that was a fairly, kind of a medium-sized motor and a gearbox that had a built-in encoder. It was like $26 or something, and I would expect, somebody wanting $150 for a motor like that. So you might want to take a look at dig through their stuff and see what they have for motors and gearboxes, and they have all kinds of things you can piece together because they're selling it to the all the First Robotics type people.
What kind of power rating do these motors have? If you have any idea, I'm gonna take a look for sure. I believe it was you who sent the link. Oh yeah.
Yeah, just now I posted a link.
Okay.
They're probably like 12-volt motors, but they might run them on whatever those little lithium-ion packs are. It might be like like a radio control type battery. It might be 11 volts or 7 volts or something.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for this information. Uh, we're trying to find really high wattage and a high powered motor, and that's a challenge actually in itself, trying to find the right motor, because we found some motors that are 100 watts or somewhere around 90 watts, but then when you're trying to work on a farm, that kind of power doesn't cut it. So and then with these scooters on road, they have 250-watt motors. I believe they're brushless, but trying to find brushed motors that are 250 watts, the prices go really high. I think the price I saw was $800 for a pair of motors. So things get really high price when we look at these motors with high power rating. Yeah, something I found interesting. We haven't looked into brushless motors, but I think that I've suggested my team to take a look at those as well. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah.
Hey, someone, did you get the part numbers for the motors from the team from Nova Scotia at the AgBot Challenge?
I didn't, but I believe they were using stepper motors. They weren't using actual DC motors, So we're trying to use, we're not trying to use stepper motors, but we're trying to use motors with encoders, like DC motors with encoders built in. But I don't know. I'm pretty impressed with how the scooters are performing. Honestly, they're doing really well. I read the news the other day, and both of the scooter startups are at $1 billion evaluation, which is pretty fantastic. I mean,
wow.
Yeah, the startup Bird is the fastest startup to reach $1 billion evaluation, and that speaks for itself about the technology. What astonishes me, it's astounding how they turn these components into an actual product, and really easy to service products, because I've also seen that they're trying to find basic mechanics with basic knowledge, like mechanics who are basically handy with tools. They're trying to put them to work, but by giving them some online training, so that they're trying to set up their supply chain by training people, which is also an interesting concept to say. So, and they're using brushless motors for sure. So I'm pretty interested in trying to use these motors, because if these motors can carry a person for up to 200 pounds, then I think they might be a good fit for robots.
That's a good point. They're pretty interesting machines. Down here in Austin, you see those scooters everywhere, and they just came out overnight, and I don't know if it was overnight, but it just seems like they're everywhere now.
Yeah, that's how it happened over here as well, and I think it's a pretty interesting technology.
Yeah, I saw a few in Ann Arbor actually last week.
I spent the day playing around with simulations and looking up different robots, and I found what's interesting sometimes, like if you do a search for a ROS package and then you wait 3 months and you do the same search, you can find different things. So it's just this continuous. I don't know how you stay up on who's doing what, and they're on GitHub, so there's no easy way to find them. But I'll share the screen. This is a little, and I'll post the link here. This is a tractor project that's starting out. I don't know if you can see the screen, but they don't have a model. That's what I was mainly looking for, is a tractor model, but they list their hardware and the software that they're using. Now I see that they're using the Teensy 3.5, which has a lot more I/O than the 3.2, but maybe a good project to kind of keep an eye on. They just updated this a couple days ago, but they have a pretty good layout of all the components that they're using, really similar to the devices we talk about and use. But it's always nice to look at other people's hardware and software, electronics, and see how they're putting their things together. Might be a good project to learn from.
Is that like $20,000 or $30,000 in items?
Well, yes. I mean, like the sensors are expensive.
They're like, we're going to do this cheap without LabVIEW, but here's $30,000 in stuff.
But like this Fidget's spatial IMU, I don't know anybody that's used this one, so it'll be kind of interesting to see how that one works.
That one's actually on our list for alternatives. It has ROS support, so I think that is why they're using it. That's our alternative for Tinkerforce. They're almost the same in terms of accuracy.
Okay.
So when we say ROS support, that means it's got a pub sub interface, right? Like it's connected, it's got a ROS driver written maybe, because I did one where it was C++ was writing for the main device. I wrote the drivers to kind of control it, but then it was connecting to the ROS thing to kind of transmit, publish, and consume or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
By ROS support, I mean manufacturers provide ROS drivers.
Oh, I gotcha. Instead of someone out there, or not open source community, you're saying the manufacturer provides ROS support.
Yeah, it's always helpful when the manufacturer provides it, because then you don't have to then you don't have to worry about the being maintained. So I think the maintenance, not only for the device but also for the code, that's important as well. So it helps when you have a manufacturer working on trying to make their products more competitive, because there's an incentive for the manufacturers by maintaining this code, because then people are more likely to buy these things, because then there's less worry for them, for their consumers. So
Roger.
Yeah. But yeah, I like the ROS support part of devices. Also, I saw they use RoboClaw for motor controllers, and we've had them. RoboClaw also comes with ROS drivers. So if you're trying to find a controller, those are pretty costly though. They're $150. When you compare it to a normal H-Bridge controller, that is, $12, $15. This one's like 10 times more costly. But the best part is that they come with an built-in PID control, and then you have an interface and a software interface. So it's worth the price. It saves
Well, software is easy. What are you so worried about? Software is like the easiest thing ever. Hardware is the hard part.
I think it takes more time to work on the software. Like if you have to write a driver by yourself, then that means that there's less time for you to work on your actual application.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to, maybe I'm a little cynical. Whatever. It can all be fixed in software. We routed the signal wrong through the wrong wires. Just change it in software. Okay, I will. No big deal.
But so in the drivers for the motor controller, the RoboClo, they're community maintained, right? They're not the manufacturer maintained.
I believe you asked if the manufacturer of RoboClaw maintains the driver for them. Am I correct?
No, what I'm saying is it's community maintained. I thought that's just community maintained.
Yeah. It was
They're-
posted by. I saw their website, and it's not community maintained. I mean, it was posted by RoboClaw. It was posted by someone, but from the RoboClaw, and I don't know. I
Okay.
thought it was. I might be wrong, but for
Yeah.
Fitbit, it's for sure manufacturer maintained. So.
Yeah, I know they have provided the Python libraries to control the all the motor functions. So what people have done is just leverage that and then build the publishers and the subscribers around it, sort of put it into the ROS package. I'll check it out. I mean, I'm not 100% sure. But yeah.
The magic happens on the board itself. The board does the PID and everything. So quite honestly, it doesn't matter if if the driver is manufacturer maintained or not, because it's going to publish something. But the good part about the RoboClaw is that you can publish your CMD velocity directly to the RoboClaw, and then it's gonna move the motors accordingly. So pretty cool.
Oh yeah, I agree. They got a lot of really nice, the motor control functions. And then you can write your own. I mean, it's just easy because everything's provided in Python. So I feel more comfortable working with it.
I haven't played with it yet because we don't have the motors to play with. We have the motors to play with it, but we don't have the encoders. And then you need a feedback. You use the board uses the encoders as feedback to use for the PID functions on there. So I've used it with some really bad encoders, and it worked. It seemed to work. So, but it didn't give me the exact idea of how the actual thing would work. So we're trying to source these motors that have built-in encoders, and then we're trying to make it work with the controller that we're planning to use. We currently have the 15 amp controller, but we're also sourcing the 45 amp controller, which is $160. Good price though.
Sorry, what kind of controller?
60 amps. They provide power up to 60 ampere.
Okay.
It's nice.
Okay, yeah, that's a lot of power actually.
Yeah. We're trying to have a factor of safety of at least 2 on this one.
Okay. Yeah, you can also try the absolute encoder, if that's something that you wanted to explore. The only difference would be, the absolute would actually retain the position, even if you shut it off and shut it down, so that when you come back up again, it would actually know that at what angle, if you're converting that into an angle or something like that, it would remember. So see if that might be of interest, maybe instead of using the relative encoder, which kind of resets every time. It's up to the usage, and then your design requirement.
It's fascinating. Next week, I'd still need to verify, but they have that person from Ag Law going to give a presentation, but I was wondering if there are any questions that we could send him beforehand so he knows. Do you have any like legal questions that you're curious about or are interested in asking? Obviously, you can ask them next week after the presentation, but if there are some questions, we could send him beforehand so he knows.
What's this topic?
He is like liability around ag autonomous equipment. So he's going to give a presentation. He said it's about 20 minutes where he goes over that. What are like the legal issues? I mean, a couple questions I was wondering, you know, if a farmer makes one of these things and you're running it on your own property, you know, I think that my opinion, you know, you're okay, but maybe that's not okay. I don't know.
Right.
And then if, you know, I mean, I've asked around, you know, so like if you take this robot out and drive it around, you know, there's no laws regarding these things. So it's like, you know, okay, well, how does this work? In Washington, they have this thing called, it's an exemption for farms where you put this sign, you have this sign, it's a specific kind of verbiage. Letters have to be 1 inch tall or whatever, but basically it says, you know, if you come onto this property, you're assuming the risks of the nature of farming. And so that if you post that sign, you don't have to deal with the liability.
That's awesome. I'm going to put that sign up just because. You guys need it with that tractor, with that lawnmower, I'm telling you.
We should do is put that sign in front of the lawnmower, wherever it goes. But so those are some of the questions I had. I don't know if you guys have any questions or ideas that areas that you'd like him to cover.
I got some ideas. I'll email you. Pop it in my head.
Okay. Just to give him a heads up.
Just email, put it in the chat in the general Slack, or
yeah, sure.
Okay. When you joining my team, man?
You're in Dallas. I was planning on going to Dallas on Friday.
Well, I'm gonna be in New Jersey on Friday.
Ah.
I'm just saying, man. Just saying. Call me.
Timing.
So backing up a few minutes, it turns out one of the fidgets I use is the one that we're using. I don't know if it's the same one they had listed there, but we went through all these cheap ones. We couldn't get anything that worked, and then finally, the one guy said, "Well, in school we used this one," and he ordered it and he made it work, and that's the one we've been using for our stuff.
So you're pretty happy with that one?
As far as I know, you know, we haven't moved anything else yet, so. And I'd like to also remind people that the Black Friday, Cyber Monday sales are coming up, and Pololu always has a good sale every year. And I think SparkFun also puts stuff on, and there's probably several other places that, you know, you want to think ahead of time, you know, what kind of parts do you need, and look to see, maybe even like Servo City probably anybody out there will have something they're calling a Cyber Monday sale. So like for an entire week, they put all their stuff on sale, and some people have pretty good deals, and so be thinking ahead on that.
That's good. Tomorrow morning, if you guys are interested, the ROS 2 navigation meeting is tomorrow at 8 o'clock, I think Pacific time, AM. I can post the link to that. If you're interested in what's the future of navigation in ROS 2, what that will look like. Besides make it easier. Well, maybe they want to hear that too. Looks like we're at the top of the hour. Is any other comments, suggestions, topics?
All good for today.
All right. Great seeing you guys. We'll see you next week, if not before.
Thanks,
Good
Matt.
night.
So guys, thanks, Matt.
Bye.